I am an extremely passionate and committed human services professional who possesses an in-depth working knowledge of the psychological and sociological aspects of human development. I consider myself to be a cognitive behavioral specialist, believing that making a change in how one thinks brings about a change in what one does. Many shy away from therapy because they feel their situations are either unique or they are fearful, embarrassed, or ashamed to let others know they need help. SciSpot is my way of corralling pertinent personal, professional, and academic information on understanding human development in one place for all to access privately and even share with others. My personal mission statement is, I am driven by divine precepts and an undying passion to facilitate change in the lives of others. What's yours? Let SciSpot guide you through your healing and provide you with many other ways of becoming better today than you were yesterday. Come on in and join me.
And good morning. I'm your host as always, Darlene. Welcome to SciSpot. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. A beautiful day. Back outside, as you can see, in my favorite place. I enjoy the acoustics of working inside, but the acoustics out here are pretty well, but most importantly, it's a very stimulating environment. It's nice and warm. I have all of the nature at my disposal. The birds, the frogs, the snakes. I haven't seen any gators out here yet. Don't think it's going to be any out here unless somebody puts them out here. But it's a very stimulating environment. It's very soothing and relaxing as well. Last week's show, we were talking about, and actually we wrapped that show up because there were 5 signs that you may be in a toxic relationship, and the title of the show was now that I know it's a toxic relationship, how do I get out of it? What do I want to do about it? Right? Because now you know that this relationship is toxic, right? And toxic relationships, and this is what people have to understand, when you're in a toxic relationship, you may not always come in as the toxic contributor. Over time, you become toxic like the environment, and you begin to add to the toxicity of that environment, right? So one of the things that I looked at last week was that we have to also start looking at other aspects of self, you know, because you say, okay, well, I'm toxic, but in what way? Well, codependency is one of those ways that you can make a contribution to a relationship being toxic. So today we're going to talk about codependence, what it is, what it looks like. Could it possibly be something that you have a challenge with, right, or not? But most importantly, through any of these shows that you watch, if you're in denial about your own issues, right, if you're only watching the show to identify the issues and the challenges, the shortcomings of your partner, then it's not going to be anything different for you, because you're doing the same thing. That's toxic behavior, when you only look at the other person and never look at yourself, right? You have to look at yourself always, first and foremost. Even if you look at yourself to the capacity of, should I have entered into this relationship with that person? Because it starts there. It really does. A lot of times when I'm doing fatherhood classes, and the guys are sitting there talking about their thoughts and feelings on things, it's a lot of legitimacy to it, right? Because they're living particular lifestyles that the person who they're involved with, right, knows, is aware of, and yet continue to enter into that relationship, such as many of them involved in criminal activity, selling drugs, right? Now, you are benefiting financially from the activities of his selling drugs. Then you got pregnant by him, and then the expectations, whatever they were, in most cases, that, okay, you need to change this lifestyle because we have a child now. It doesn't work that way. See, that's that toxic behavior. Because if the person is not coming into the relationship with that standard of living, why would you expect for that person to change that standard of living because you get pregnant? Sure, you could say it makes sense, but to who? To who? That's his cash cow. That's his way of life. That's how he made his money. Now you say, stop because I'm pregnant. Well, the possibility of you getting pregnant when you're having unprotected sex is quite high, isn't it? Right? So that means that's not an unplanned pregnancy. If you're engaging in sexual activity without protection, that is actually a planned pregnancy, intended or not, in that moment. Right? Because when you're having unprotected sex, there's a possibility, unless he's had that snip done, unless you've had that cut done and that burn done, unless you've had those things done, right? In many cases, it's not even asked when you're ready to get into it, right? But the reality of it is that it's a possibility, right? It's a possibility. So when you expose yourself to those probabilities, right? Because that's what they become once you engage in activity without protection. It's probability now. You can probably get pregnant, right? So now you have to look further down the lane, because now you have a child with that person. If that person doesn't stop, what's going to be the outcome? If the person does stop, what's going to be the outcome? Because if that person doesn't have the education, doesn't have the vocation, doesn't have any marketable employment skills, right? What's going to be the backlash of all of that? Can they really bounce back? Right? When you look at the time it takes to build, right? It took me years to build my career. It started off as a job. The career building came into play when I started going back to school. When I started taking on positions that were relevant to my growth and development as a professional, right? So you have to look at all of these things, right? And you can't blame him. Sure, you can complain and say, well, that's what a father is supposed to do, but you don't even know my example of a father in many cases. And if my father wasn't there, that's a sign in itself that I'm pretty much just rolling the dice every day into parenthood. And parenthood is not something that's scripted, right? But when you add other components, negative components to one's life, the likelihood of it being disastrous is much higher. So when you start looking at codependence, right, you have to start looking at how you deviate from an intended course, from an intended way of your living, right, to satisfy the needs, to appease the needs of another person, right? Now, I've always, considered myself to be a very accommodating person. I'm a person who, believes in, doing everything I possibly can to make my woman happy. That's my responsibility, right? Because if I'm not doing that, then it's making room for somebody else to do that. So if she says she likes this, she likes that, I do everything I possibly can to ensure that that happens, within reason. Now, if you have somebody in your life who is, high maintenance, who is asking you for things that are beyond, right, your means, then that's a whole, that's a whole nother discussion to have. Because you're not going to cause me to live beyond my means. I may be codependent in some other capacities, but, well, we'll come back to that too. But that is something more prevalent when you see that happen. Like, okay, well, I can't buy you that, and then if you buy it for that person, you find yourself in a position no longer with that person. You feel even more of a fool, right? But there are things that I know that are expected of me as a man in a relationship with a woman. She should feel happy. She should feel like a queen, a princess, whatever it is that she feels she deserves, right? If you can give that, you give that. If you can't, fall out, right? Because it's only going to be a setup later on down the line. So I'm a very accommodating person. And let me go to the definition of accommodating, right? Okay, accommodating. Fitting in with someone's wishes or demands in a helpful way. And this is important to understand because that's the operative word. Helpful way. Right? In a helpful way. Right? Obliging, cooperative, helpful, eager to help, adaptable, amenable, considerate, unselfish, inclusionary, generous, willing, compliant, kindly, hospitable, neighborly, kind, friendly, pleasant, agreeable, right? Now, when you look at those kind of behaviors of a person, right, you have to look at a person outside of their interaction with you and look at everything that they do around you. How they talk to the person at your restaurant who's your server, right? How they talk to the doctors and the medical staff when they're in the emergency ward, when they're getting services from a person. How they treat people who are in the supermarket standing in line. You may have 30 items in your cart and the person behind you has 4. You understand what I'm saying? So you want to look at those kind of characteristics. Those are elements of an accommodating person. The problem comes into play is when a person has these traits of codependence, right? Now, when you look at having traits of, the traits come as a result of prior experiences. So it's easy to jump back in that role of being codependent, right? And we're going to go more into that as the show goes on today. But I want you to look at, if you're accommodating, if you do everything for your partner, helpful, right? If they're not working, you pick up the weight on everything else. If they need to go to school and you know they need to go to school and a part-time job is better than having a full-time job, then that's helpful. That's something that's for the future. It allows, the development and creation of other opportunities for the two of you down the line. When you look at somebody just having certain earnings and you have higher earnings, what do you do to help them get some of the things that they want to get as well that they may not can afford right now? So that's accommodating. So when we start going into this list of where are we at, 6 hallmarks of codependent relationships, I want you to start looking at how you're accommodating, but I also want you to look at these traits of codependency, right? Because it's important to understand that there's a really thin line between the two. But the operative here is one is helpful and one is unhealthy. One is unhealthy. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, right? It's going to continue to seep. It's going to continue to become infected. It's going to affect the entire body, not just the area of the injury, right? And we know that medical matters turn into psychological and or psychiatric matters over a period of time, right? So listen, let's go right into the article on the 6 hallmarks of codependence. Excuse me. All right, so this article is on Psychology Today. The article is by Sean M. Byrne, PhD. And the article is titled 6 Hallmarks of Codependence. And now, from the article. I regularly get questions from people who are upset that friends or relatives have branded them as codependent. They want to know if I think they're codependent. As I've said in earlier posts, there isn't exactly agreement about what codependence is, and some people define it so broadly, almost anyone can be classified as codependent. But there are some hallmarks of codependency that are agreed upon by most therapists. Basically, you might be codependent if you, and I'm going to go through this list, but I want to elaborate a little bit on the first part here. Just like any other diagnosis, right, there's a cluster of things, a cluster of behaviors that present, right? And we look at these clusters and say, okay, am I more of this? Is the person more of that? So on and so forth. We go down that list and say, okay, well, this seems more like what I'm challenged with. Same way here, right? Same way here. You know, there are traits, there are characteristics, part of our personality, right, that exist, that fit for some of these, not all of them. So don't listen to all of them and say, well, that's not me, and then dismiss the idea, right, or the possibility that you're codependent. And again, it goes back to, you're not always, that doesn't make you a codependent person. That means that certain relationships, right, that you enter into, right, bring forth that part of your personality, right? Because it's not in all the relationships. But there are certain relationships that you enter into, right? It pops right out. You start doing this, you start doing that. And it all depends on what you're feeling from a person, what the person is telling you, how they're influencing you. You know, what are they showing you that you feel that maybe you want to go from accommodating to being codependent, right? Because sometimes you'll do it just because it's in alignment with an idea of what you think that person should be doing, because that's another aspect of codependence, right? That person, well, you should be going back to school because you're not going to make any more money than this, right? So again, that's a form of codependence, and we're going to go to the list. Number one on the list, have an excessive and unhealthy tendency to rescue and take responsibility for other people. Now think about that for a minute. To rescue and take responsibility for other people. What we have to do is we have to look at, if you find yourself in the same type of relationship over and over and over again, and they haven't been successful ones, right? But you find the same elements exist in each one of your relationships, in each one of them, right? Now, I've been guilty of this. I have found myself in the same types of relationships over and over and over again. And let me tell you why, right? I'm a rescuer. I'm a caretaker, right? I want to take you from being here to being there. Because again, it goes back to being accommodating. If you don't have the means at this point to be able to do this, you know, you're paying all your bills, you got your car notes, you got your car insurance, you got your rent and all those things, but you're really striving hard, right, to be able to earn more money. You're looking for another job to be able to earn more money, but you know how it is when you're looking for a job to earn more money, right? You find yourself getting dug into where you are, and there's comfort, there's complacency, and it just ain't that bad. It don't get that bad until things happen, and then you be like, I got to start looking again, right? So again, that's codependency. You're accepting certain conditions because of your own complacency, because of your own inability, right, to move forward. Why don't you just move on from it? Right? You're not happy. You're not making the money you want to make. Why are you staying there? Now, let's look at your relationships that you're in, right? Why are you with this person? They've been telling you the same thing all these years. You supported them. You supported the idea, right, that they were going to improve themselves. So they were going to school when you met them, right? You know, they were taking 2 classes. They were, you know, working. They were doing all these things, and it looked like they were trying to, you know, and you was with them, ride to die. Then all of a sudden, months into the relationship, the semester in, they didn't re-enroll. So why didn't you re-enroll? Oh, I just needed a break. And I said, oh, okay, well, if you had academic studies or any kind of training, whatnot, sometimes you might need a break, especially if you're not used to it. But next thing you know, all right, the next semester comes up, and they're talking about enrollment, but they waited too late to get the paperwork in. You said, oh, man, you really should have. Now, go back to the job. Okay, opportunity came up. You got looked over. You still stayed. But you complained the whole time. You're uncomfortable, being in the environment. It's difficult in the environment, but you stay. Well, listen, I got to make money. I got to earn. Okay, if that's the case, stop complaining. Stop complaining. Why do you continue to complain? Why do you continue to remain in that relationship? Right? So what people tend to do is separate. Well, it's different. A job is different because that's a means for livelihood. In a relationship, you can cut that person off, or you can do the same with both. And if you're in a relationship with someone, right, that is part of your life, isn't it? Isn't that part of your livelihood? Right? So they're not different. What it is showing you a pattern of behavior. It's showing you traits and characteristics of self. That's what it's actually showing you. Right? So ask yourself, who are you saving? Who are you saving? And why are you saving that person? Why are you jumping in to rescue that person? How long have they been trying to pursue academic studies? Why did it take them so long to pursue academic studies? Right? What was their path? What was their course prior to you? Prior to you. What was it? Did you have that conversation? Did you ask that question? That's important to understand. But you're taking responsibility for somebody else, right? And then here's the other part. And you're also telling people, oh, well, no, he's all right. He just took some time off and he needed that time. It's kind of hard, working and going to school. I've done that. I've been there before too, so I know it's kind of hard. And he's just not used to it. And you find yourself 2 years down the line still telling the same story. So you're taking responsibility for what they're failing to do with their own lives. But it's eating you alive inside because you're like, dude, you said that you were going to do such and such. And now the arguments start. Now we're going back into toxic, right, relationships. Right? So now we're looking at why this relationship has now become toxic. It's become toxic because of expectations. And you say, well, no, they gave their word. Okay, so if they gave their word, and their word is important, and they didn't keep their word, why are you staying with it? Because if they didn't keep their word with this, what other things are they not keeping their word with? Or have they not kept their word with, and you don't even know about? How many things? Because now we're talking about trust. So you're staying in a relationship where you don't trust the person. See how this begins to become compounded? And that's how relationships become toxic. Because we're not looking at our own condition. We're watching the person, right, metamorphosize into something that we didn't expect. And now we're complaining, and now the love that we have for that person is a different kind of love. It's more familiarity now, right? Because that's how we wind up back in old relationships. After one relationship ends, we go back to what's familiar because we want to keep that momentum going because of our need to continue feeling loved and cared for regardless of what capacity the love was in, right? Even if it's not legitimate love. It fills that void. It fills the emptiness from what you just lost. And you go back to, right? You go back to. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Don't do that. Don't work. Trust me. It's just like riding a bike. If you ain't rode a bike in a year, trust me. When you mount up, you roll out. Right? It's no different. You remember how to pedal, how to turn, how to jump off curves, all that kind of stuff. So it's not going to be any different. Just a matter of moments before it goes right back to where it was. But anywho, so you start taking responsibility for that person's behaviors. You start telling lies about why he ain't doing this or why she ain't doing that, or all this other stuff. You start telling all these stories, and then you begin to believe it. Now you've convinced yourself of it. You've co-signed it, right? You've co-signed it. You've taken it on. You know this relationship ain't going nowhere. You know that this person is not going to do anything. You know you're dissatisfied with the whole situation, but you stay. You stay. Why? Because you've convinced yourself that this person needs you to rescue them. And you don't call it rescuing, you call it supporting. Or you call it accommodating. And that's what I have to look at. That's what I have to look at. When I'm being accommodating, and when I'm being a rescuer, right? When I'm being codependent in my conduct. Number 2 on the list, derive a sense of purpose and boost your self-esteem through extreme self-sacrifice to satisfy the needs of others. I want you to hear this again. Because what we're talking about is you might be codependent if you derive a sense of purpose and boost your self-esteem through extreme self-sacrifice to satisfy the needs of others. And I was already going into number 2 as I was talking about number 1. Now, what is extreme self-sacrifice? Extreme self-sacrifice. This person got a job, right? They finally got a job. After all your encouragement and all your patience, this person finally got a job. The job is the overnight shift, the late shift. And they got to be in at 12 a.m., right? It's only one car in the household, it's yours, right? This person who you care about, who you don't want to be out late by themselves, right? Waiting on the bus that is coming, but you want them to get home to you sooner, right? And you want them to be safe. This is what you've told yourself, right? So now they're using your car. They work 12 to 8. You have to be to work at 8. What do? I say, all right, I'll catch the bus. Now, you used to be able to get up at 6:30, roll out by 7:30, and get to work by 8. Right now, you have to get out by 5:30, right? So you can catch the bus and the train so you get to work by 8. And you begin to do that, and you become okay with doing that. While this person, not only do they get off of work at 8, but they don't even come straight in, right? You call them because they haven't called you yet to tell you that they're in, because they're not in. They get off of work and they hanging out. Why? Because you ain't home anyway, you at work. What you get mad for? Right? But you don't see them for lunch. They don't come by for lunch. They don't come by and holler at you. They're going about their business, right? But meanwhile, your car is in their hands, and you catch the bus every day, and okay with it, and are okay with it, right? But wait a minute. That may work for a while, but now your whole life has been turned around, and especially if you have children. Right? So now you got to work out things with them, and they got things to do because now they feel like that car is theirs. And they begin to act as such. You get in your car, they got, little black ice trees hanging from it, and this, that, and the other, and all that. Then they had little homie and stuff all up in it. Right? Now we're talking about extreme self-sacrifice. We're talking about extreme self-sacrifice. Right? Because if you don't think that's extreme, then that's part of the other problem. Because you don't see it as being extreme. You think, well, that's me looking out for my boo. Well, why ain't your boo looking out for you? Right? Your boo can catch the bus. Right? Period. Period. Because at the end of the day, I want you to get back and forth to work. I want you to be safe. And it don't have to happen in the overnight shift You know, it happened anytime. And at the end of the day, right, I need for you to be able to do what you're doing. I need to toughen up, right? I need to man up, right? And I need to go ahead and do what I got to do. Period. Period. Now, if you want to make some adjustments in that, listen, you can. If you want to get up in the middle of the night and pick me up, that's fine too. But when you start doing other things other than that, like, and then putting that burden upon yourself, now that's not accommodating. That's not accommodating. And then get mad about it. Right? So, number 2 was derive a sense of purpose and boost your self-esteem through extreme self-sacrifice. Right? Look at what it's boosting yourself. I'm helping my baby. Right? I'm helping my baby. I feel good about that. Right? He's happy with me now. He loves me. He'll stay with me because of what I've done for him. Right? Look at those kind of things. Number 3 on the list. Choose to enter, you're codependent if you choose to enter and stay in lengthy, high-cost, caretaking, and rescuing relationships, despite the costs to you or others. Now, it's not talking about necessarily financial costs. It's talking about costs across the board. What is this costing you? What is this costing you? You taking care of your boo. He got the ride. He driving you on the bus. It's cold outside. And right now, up north, it's snow outside. But my baby is safe. Right? What cost? What cost for you? Right? So, it's bad weather. Now you're getting up at 4 because you got to roll out at 5. Right? Now look at this. It's getting later and later. Right? Now, what does that mean? That means that your nightlife also begins to change, doesn't it? Right? So that means there's no more like sitting up watching the 8, 9 o'clock sitcoms, because you got to get up in a couple of hours. You need all your rest. You got to be able to perform. You have to be safe. So now your safety is compromised because you get on the train, you're tired, you sleep. On the bus, sleep, out. Stuff running all down the side of your face. You wake up. You're at the depot. You're at the depot, which is 200 miles away. Now you got to go catch something else. Right? But this is how your life begins to change. Your attitude begins to change. Because if you're tired, what comes along with being tired all the time? Right. Irritation, frustration, anger. Remember, now we're in toxic relationship mode. Right? Toxic relationship mode. Now what happens? Okay. Now, a bright idea. You know what? I'm going to buy me a hoopty. Listen, just got income tax back, right? You can help me get a hoopty. You can have your car back, and I can go ahead and get my own little whip. All right, so you get a little, y'all put y'all little funds together, get a nice little hoopty, right? Go, you got a few more months left on the payments, right? Not a whole lot because most of it has been paid for, right? And get that. Oh snap! They cut my hours. If you'd have got that $2,500 car instead of the $4,500 car, that wouldn't become a major issue. Now it's a major issue. Because now, not only does your car insurance have to be paid, this car note has to be paid too. So now I got to help you with that. Now, we haven't even factored in the responsibilities of children. Right? If there's children involved. But now we have all these other things that begin to get cut. You get cut. Nails, hair, oh, no, now. So now you can't get that Naomi Sims real lifelike hair, that you want to get. Now you got to go get the stuff that you can't stand in the sun too long because like poof, might happen. The nails, we used to get the gel. Now you got to go to, the dollar store and get your own little color stuff and put your own little stickers and stuff on to make it. You start, see all these things, what cost? At what cost? Is this relationship really worth it? What's it about this relationship that you make all these sacrifices for? And that you get all these, you get this whole list of costs that show you what you're losing in yourself. In yourself. Right? This is what we don't take into consideration when we're in. Listen, I don't care how good the wood or the little Kit Kat is. It don't even matter, man. You can't bang away your reality. You just can't. You giving up the goodies for nothing. For nothing. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be by yourself. You know it. But being codependent means that I'm going to do whatever's possible to keep from being by myself. I'm going to just do it. I don't want him to leave. I don't want her to leave. And it's not just, listen, you hear about codependency and you don't hear it applied to the behaviors of men enough. It's always about a woman staying in an abusive relationship, whether it's verbally or physically abusive. You don't hear about men. And codependent relationships are not just those kind of relationships. Codependent relationships are relationships where you're losing you for the sake of being with them, for the sake of them not leaving you, for the sake of you not being by yourself, for the sake of you keeping your self-esteem high because you have someone. It's easy when you see someone who doesn't have someone and be haughty about the fact that you have someone to go home to, somebody that's not even giving you what you need, what you deserve to have. Right? So your self-esteem drops when you look at, I don't have him anymore. I don't have her anymore. Men go through that a lot. And there's not enough dialogue being had about men who are codependent. Right? What was that? Why did I get married to? The second one, when everybody's stuff came out, when everybody thought that the only dysfunctional relationship was the one, the loud, raunchy, ghettoized, ratchet couple, right? Everybody thought, that's the couple, that's toxic. When everybody else's stuff was toxic too. Everybody else's stuff was toxic too. Everybody has stuff, right? And you have to look at all of these things. So number 3, you choose. Remember, this is a choice. You can't blame that other person. So when you stay in that relationship and the stuff goes on and on and on and on, and you are running on nothing but fumes, but you are still in that relationship, it's your choice. Don't go running and tell mama. No. Ain't no sense you running and tell nobody. It's your choice. You choose to stay in this relationship because of what? Good sex? Wants great sex? Because the sex is just sex at this point. It's not even worthy. It's no connection. You just letting somebody, push their what I want to say, negative spirit up in you, because that's all it is. It's just negative. You're being stripped spiritually, by this whole situation. Because every time you have sex, hell, you can get a cucumber, your finger, you can get anything, to bring yourself to a climax. But here you have this person, inside of you, or you're inside of this person whose spirit is just, it's like you're in the spirit. People don't realize this. You're dipping in the spirit. You have a spirit that's on you, and it's a connection there. And when it's a bad situation, when it's a toxic situation, right, that ain't even good no more. You just going along to get along, right? Just to satisfy that inner knowing. That's all you're doing. But that ain't love, and you just stay with it, and you just stay with it because you don't believe. You don't believe, and this is why it's a self-esteem issue. You don't believe that you can find somebody who's worthy of having you. You don't believe it. but you don't look at the selection you continue to make. See, we keep looking this way, when all the while the person who is really better for us, who's really good for us, is standing right in front of us. But we keep looking away from that person, looking towards that person, and we don't even understand why we keep looking towards that person. We keep looking towards the same person, and no matter how many different people take the place of that person who you were once looking at, they all look the same at the end of the day, because you're in the same kind of relationship, because you won't look that way. You won't look that way because you keep telling yourself it's that way. Stop looking for the wounded look. That's what we as rescuers have to stop doing. Stop looking for the wounded look. Stop looking to save somebody. Stop looking to take somebody from a condition that they choose to be in. They choose to be in that condition. They choose to be in that poor relationship. They choose to sit down and complain to you and tell you that they're in this bad relationship. It's your choice. Okay, so what are you going to do about it? Period. You want to be happy? You pursue happiness. You want to be miserable? You pursue misery. It's not difficult, right? So you choose to enter and stay. It's real important to understand. Remember we talked about in previous shows how like we tend to turn a blind eye to conditions when we're trying to get at it. Right? We try, you want to hit it. Let me see what's that's like. Let me get up on it. So when you're in that mode of the chase, when you're in chase mode, you turn the blind eye. We turn the blind eye to a lot of things that present. Now the caretaker, right? The caretaker, be me, right? Gets involved sexually with you. Now the obligation. Now I feel obligated, because I know the value of what you have given me. Right? Remember, I talked about that spiritual connection. I know the value of it. Now, what you place upon yourself in terms of value is going to be different than what I place upon that of you, that part of you. Now, your condition will determine how you see yourself and how you see that part of self. Right? As well as my condition. So I value you in a different capacity. At some point in time, we'll begin to see whether the value that I have for that part of you is in alignment. And if it's in alignment, then that's what's up, because I'm not taking advantage of that. But when we start looking at the length of time, right? Because number 3 is talking about the lengthy cost, the high cost of caretaking, right? At what cost? At what cost do we continue to engage in sexual activity with one another, right? At what cost? And we already know, again, this is one of those rescuing relationships. So you turn a blind eye initially. Now you're beginning to see things in a different light, and you still keep acting like they don't exist. You still keep acting like, oh, well, it's going to get better. At what cost? At what cost? Right? Do you find yourself 2, 3, 4 years down the line? Because that's what happens. Time flies by so fast, man. Before you know it, y'all celebrating another Christmas together, another Valentine's Day together, and you're sitting there looking like, wow, this is our 2nd year together. And your self-esteem is up here because we've been together for 2 years. This has been the longest relationship I've been in. Not looking at whether the relationship is healthy or not. This has been the longest time somebody has been with me. Right. Right. So, and that's what begins to happen. What we begin to tell ourselves begins to impact our esteem. Right? So, you want to look at that. This is a choice. You need to make that choice as to whether this is even worth it. And I think we concluded last week's show on the note of, now that you know that you're in a toxic relationship, what do you want to do to get out of it? Right? If you're going to stay in this toxic relationship, counseling has to happen. Professional intervention has to happen. You can't continue to go on your own juice. You can't continue to make things happen the way you want them to happen, because as Dr. Phil says, So tell me, how's that working for you? Right? You see how it's working or not. You already see it. You want to stay? You happy you know it, clap your hand. Stay in it, shut up, stop complaining. If you don't want to stay in it, if the other person is not willing to get help, you need to roll, because there ain't going to be nothing different. And yes, it's very painful. It's not an easy thing to just roll, but how painful has it been for the past few years that you've been in it? What do we got? Okay, so number 4 on that list is you could be codependent if you regularly try to engineer the change of troubled, addicted, or under-functioning people whose problems are far bigger than your abilities to fix. Think about it. Think about it. It speaks to addiction here, and most of the times people will look at, when you look at codependence, you'll look at relationships where somebody has, it's abusive, there's mental illness, or there's substance abuse issues. People look at that because we know that family members will cover that up. Family members will mask it. Family members will come up with all kind of excuses about their behavior. And it brings to mind the movie Sugar Hill, right? If you have never seen the movie Sugar Hill is a really good movie, right? To show everyone, because it looks at the dysfunction of the family. It looks at the drug dealer, the drug dealing kids. It looks at the addicted parents. It looks at how all of that is connected. And then it looks at the relationship between the brothers and their overall perception of family. Because this is the origin of this behavior as well. Remember, go back to the shows on childhood trauma. Because this is all through childhood. Right? This is conditioning. Right? That didn't just spring up out of nowhere. Right? This is a condition that was planted and that has been watered along the way. And now it lives. Right? So when we look at you taking the lead in trying to bring change to someone else's life, right? Ask yourself, how much power do you have to change your own life independent of help from anybody else? Do you want help? Ask yourself those things. Because how do you think that you have the power? And we do this. We think we have the power to change other people's lives. But as a clinician, I can tell you, I don't have the power to change anybody's life. I don't. I pray often for changing my own life. Right? I'm always assessing myself and reassessing myself. Right? These shows that I do, this is content for me. This is me. I'm doing a self-assessment. I'm assessing myself. I'm hearing myself say it, because sometimes hearing yourself say things, right, are better than seeing something that's written. But when you utter it from your mouth, you speak it into existence. And people, people don't believe that. But when you utter things from your mouth, right, it becomes your condition. It becomes your condition. So I do this, not just for hand claps and recognition. This is real stuff, man. Real rap, as the young folks say. This is real, man. It's real for me. It's real for me. See, a therapeutic relationship is just that. But part of the therapeutic relationship entails me, the clinician, caring for me, recognizing things about me, assessing things about me. First and foremost, I can't help you to understand anything if I don't understand it. If I can't apply it to my own life. If I can't look at my life and say, yeah, yeah. So when I heard, codependence, and I started looking at codependence, I started looking at me, and I started seeing how, wow, I allow a lot of things to transpire throughout my marriages that I shouldn't have, all in the name of whatever I title it: obligation, responsible living, commitment, all of those things you start putting on it to make it sound a lot better than I'm in a codependent relationship, and every relationship is not codependent, right? And again, as I said early on in the show, it shows up in different relationships where you're codependent. You have codependent friendships. You have friends who are always hitting you up for cash, right? You know they're getting high. You know they need to change their living, but you keep on giving. That's that caretaker aspect of yourself, and you know it's just a matter of time before they lose their house, and then they'll be living with you, right? Yeah, they'll be living with you and staying with you. You'll be sitting up all night with them, listening to their stories, and you know, I'm still taking care of them, buying extra food to help take care of them and your family, right? You know, giving them a few dollars so they can put gas in their car when your tank needs to be filled. You know, that kind of stuff like that. So the list goes on and on and on, right? So you trying to engineer the change of troubled, addicted, or under-functioning people whose problems are far bigger than your abilities, right? If you meet that person and they are not addressing those things on their own, then it's a good chance you're going to be the one taking care of them, right? If you are in that situation and the person is taking care of themselves, how consistent are they? How persistent are they, right? Are they just talking about change and you don't see evidence of change? Because, you know, some of us are really good talkers. You know, hey, you start believing that because that's what you want to hear. Remember, it's not them. They had the gift of gab because they know you're going to be there to take care of them. So that's their need. Their need is for somebody to take care of them. But it's uttered in another capacity where I tug on your heartstrings. I make you believe those things because I know it's the truth. But knowing that something is the truth and living the truth are two different things. Number 5, you know you're codependent if you seem to attract low-functioning people for someone to take care of them so they can avoid adult responsibility or consequences, or attract people in perpetual crisis, unwilling to change their lives. And I was just talking about this. You know, when you look at low-functioning people, we're not talking about just someone who maybe has a mental disability. You know, we're not talking about just that capacity, right? Because we all have some mental disability of a sort, especially when we talking about trauma, right? But low functioning is just looking at how a person, how productive are they, you know, in their daily lives. What do they do? What have they done to get further along, right? Because you can't just be okay with a situation that is not going to benefit a future or establishment of a foundation for a beneficial way of life for the future. That's pointless, right? So if you see someone who's been like for years in the same position over and over and over and over and over and over again, they just do nothing but talk about it and they never follow through. How do you think that's going to play out in a relationship with you? Think about it. How is that going to play out in a relationship with you? Do they even have the capacity to help you do anything? Right? Do they come over the house and just sit on the sofa, move aside the clothes you just pulled out of the dryer, right? And ask you, yo, what you got to eat? You know, or do they come in, hey, you know, what's going on? Hugs and kisses, you know, start picking up those clothes and start folding them up. Say, hey, you cooking tonight? You want me to cook? You want me to order out? You know, what contribution do they make, right? Because if I'm just coming over and just sitting in the crib and just hitting it, is that what you want? And sometimes if that's a relationship that you want to have, it's fine. If we have a connection where we just kind of get it in every now and then, that needs to be clear, because that's not always clear either. Because we go at it a couple of times and the next thing you know, there's other conversations, be like, well, we've been doing this for a while and you ain't never said that, you know, you love me, and you, wait a minute. You never said that that's what you wanted. Well, you didn't know. Remember, it goes back to the value of self. Don't say to me, what, you didn't know? Did you think that I was just giving this to you because I like giving it to you. You ain't that good anyway, Negro. But no, I'm just saying that, right? You have to look at, remember, the value. If that is the value you place, right, on yourself, don't just expect somebody else to have the same thinking process for a value for you. Don't. Because at the end of the day, a lot of times we'll get it in, we'll get it popping, and we really don't know, right, what it is that we're causing. You know, and you got to understand that women and men think differently, right? We think differently. You know, I think from the perspective of, okay, so I even if we don't have a committed of a sort relationship, I'm the one who come along and we'll get it in, and I'll still look out for you as though like we did have that kind of relationship because of my caretaking and my accommodating self, right? Because I just believe that if you're giving yourself to me in that capacity, that it's for a reason, right? It's for a reason. And even if you just like to just hook up every now and then, and that's, we have to have that conversation, and that's the problem that happens. We don't have that conversation. It becomes assumed. And then the next question becomes, so you gonna come see me next week? I'm talking about what men say. No, I'm only kidding, but both say it. It's like, okay, so, yo, so I'm gonna see you next week? What's up? Why you wanna see me next week? I'm just saying, like, yo, this is what's up. You know, you a dope sister, you a dope brother. What's up? I don't know, I'll call you. Wow, it's like that now? It's like that scene with who was that? What's that, Martin Lawrence, and what's that, Boomerang? He's like, well, it might not be the right movie, but I believe it was Martin Lawrence, and he was, like, had the covers pulled up to him and said, call me, right, like, yo, you highlight a brother. But it's a matter of looking at the value you have and the value the other person has, and being clear on, like, okay, it may not happen in the moment. We're adults. We get into one of those consensual situations. All right, so what's happening after this? Right? Has to be discussed, not right after. Okay, so what are we gonna do? So we're gonna get married. We're gonna do this like every Thursday, every Saturday. Like, so no, we don't have to. It's a matter of somewhere through the course of dialogue. You know, it has to be expressed. Hey, listen, I'm really feeling you. I don't know where we're going to go with this, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about the possibilities. And just pay attention when you're saying it, you know, be looking at the person. Make eye contact with the person. Because you remember we talked about in another show, you got to watch the body language. Because, you know, if you start to have this heartfelt dialogue, you know, about, you know, how you feel, and the person will like, the first thing you need to do is say, you know what, it's okay. It was a great night. It was a great weekend. It's a wrap for us. Thank you for all of that. What you talking about? What's up? Wow, what? I'm telling you, keep it moving. Keep it moving. You done already read the body language. You didn't misread anything. Because I'm guaranteeing you, when you ask that question, because some of you will ask that question, like, so what was all that body language? What? I don't know. What you tripping on? Remember, that's a way to divert from taking responsibility. That's how people do. They deflect and turn around and make you feel like it's you. And you all up in your feelings. Damn, I mean, you know, I'm telling you, roll out. I'm telling you, it is not going to get any better from there. There's nothing positive about that. There's nothing going to come out of that better. That is that person's condition. That's how that person deals with having dialogue on an intimate level. That's an intimate conversation. That person does not have the ability. They do not have that ability to problem solve intimate situations. You need to keep on going. Number 6 on that list, because we are at the hour, and that's good, we can wrap this up. You're codependent, or you could be codependent if you have a pattern of engaging in well-intentioned but ultimately unproductive, unhealthy helping behaviors such as enabling. Listen, that sums up the entire list and the whole conversation, right? You need to start taking a look at you. You really do. Listen, I'm telling you from experience. I'm telling you from experience. I've been married 4 times, right? I'm telling you from experience that I've learned a lot through these marriages. And the first thing, I guess, and I said this before, people always say, "Hey, 4 times, what you doing wrong?" And I've married 4 times. That means I entered into the relationship, I made my intentions known, and I moved forward with marrying. I'm a husband. That's all I know how to be. So I'm gonna always, if it's right, I'm gonna, hey, let's make it happen. Let's make it happen. That's the way it should be, because it's a matter of longevity, right? It's a matter of longevity.